Welcome to the OFX podcast. I'm Dave Claxton, and we have our own personal half-pint Hyrox Hobbit, whatever. We'll go with all of it. Bethany McChesney. And this weekend, he may not have been the winner, but I think in a way he kind of was the big winner of the Hyrox Invitational. David Magida, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I feel great. A little banged up, but I'm already back home and I'm kind of ready to kind of process it all and move forward to the next event.
Right. So I think what I'd like to do is let's go back to the beginning of the story here, because let's go back to January, right? Yeah. Go back to January. Hyrox decides we're going to have this invitational, right? Coming off a year of obviously 2020 being a rough year for everybody, for them setting up events and whatnot. And they decide we're going to have this big invitational. We're going to get Lauren, we're going to get Hunter, and we're going to have them, we're going to work with them. We're going to invite a bunch of different people, have them compete head to head for some good cash, right? $10,000 for the winner. Mm-hmm. Good cash. Now, right off the hop, you were not on that list.
This is true. Well, okay, so it goes back further than that, okay? Yeah. And the reality is what happened was Hunter was planning this thing, and he's trying to convince them, hey, invest, what is it, 30 grand in prize money? So he's trying to convince them to do that. And so he's like, I'll bring out this crazy lineup of athletes, whatever. And he called me, and Hyrox was not on my radar. I knew what it was, but I wasn't training for it. All I did last year, I did no strength training. I lost a huge amount of my strength, my muscle, and all I was doing was running like crazy and doing body weight strength. And so that was most of last year. And then the gym, my gym that I own, Elevate, started kind of getting rolling again. So I started picking that stuff up gradually, but just not at the level I was. But Hunter reached out to me and was like, hey man, we're having this thing. There's really nobody out here who has a chance against me. Maybe you do, but that's it. And so I was like, listen, man, I'm not trained for this. I'm not ready for this. Physically, my body is not what I want it to be competing in Hyrox. I'd like to be 10 pounds heavier and just way more muscle than I have right now. But I can get there eventually. I probably need, 6 more months from today, literally now. But I said, but if you are serious, if you get me in the elite wave, like you're telling me, then yeah, I'll focus on this and train for this as my next big thing. Cause all I've been doing last year was, running virtual marathons and ran the JFK 50 miler. So he goes, yeah, no problem. And then all week that week, I'm texting him hey, I saw someone else got invited. Where's my code? Let me hook me up with this entry. And I had started training for it. And a month goes by and I'm just training for Hyrox. I'm doing sims all the time. I'm starting to dial in workouts specifically for it. And then I'm like, what's up? When are you going to get me in? He goes, you're not going to get in. He goes, I'm not giving you a spot. So after all this, now I'm a month of training into it. And I'm like, well, screw this guy. I'm getting in. So that's where the shit talk began, because I figured if he can shit talk his way into the CrossFit Games, then I'm just going to take a page out of Hunter's book and just shit talk my way into this invitational. It's not like I expected to beat him on my first try, but you gotta, I'm a TV guy, man. I know the deal. You gotta play it up a little bit. And I knew I would have a very, very good, respectable first go. So I just started talking a little bit of smack, but I thought I did it in a respectful way. The I'm going to put my foot on his throat thing comes straight out of an old line that I used when he and I competed against each other in the Spartan Ultimate Team Challenge in 2015. I pulled it right out of the episode. And so he called me after because I sent an email to E-Rock being hey man, you really need to invite me. Here's all of my credentials. And I'm the guy that's going to put my foot down on this guy's throat. And he forwarded it to Hunter. And then Hunter called me and was put your money where your mouth is. And I should have taken that damn bet. He bet me, I think it was $5 grand. $5 if I get top 3, he'll pay me $5 grand. And if I don't, I'll pay him $5 grand. And I should have taken the bet. But I was you don't make that bet with the guy who is choosing the lineup. Because then, you never know who's going to get invited, So anyway, people got all up in arms because they said I was being a cocky jerk or whatever. But really, I was just trying to get into the race. And And I think I proved that I deserve to be there, if nothing else.
Oh, 100%.
So what do you think the phone call was about then in the first place? Was it just to get you going? Yeah.
When? Which call?
Like the very first phone call. Like, why do you think he would have made that phone call then? Just to get you going and then leave you hanging?
I think he wanted.
Was it the start of the game, basically? I mean,
I think he wanted me there initially because he didn't know who he was going to bring, and then he just decided like, I'm going to invite all these other people. Because then he started telling me like, I was like, come on, I'm faster than this person you're inviting. I'm faster than this person you're inviting. Like, trust me. He's like, you've never even run a Hyrox. You've been retired for this many years. He's like, you're just a gym instructor. He's like, I'm talking about real athletes. That's what he said to me. So then I had like this really nasty fire in my belly.
Just a gym instructor.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just sat with me. And then that was kind of my motivator to, one, talk my way in, and two, train my butt off for it. And listen, I still, like I said, I think I'm 6 months away from being really competitive in this, but I'm going to be there. I'm going to be a lot better. Kent texted me yesterday and was like, you did basically what I did on my first go, and he's gone under an hour now. So, I think
I'm going to get to those numbers in a bit because I got some stuff I want to run past you for numbers wise. So after all that happens, right, all the shit talk starts, and you're not on the list. It's supposed to go in February, gets canceled, right?
Yeah,
or not canceled, postponed to April 10th. So from that point, how did you end up? How did it go through the sequence of events of how you actually end up on the list?
So that's right. So I ended up. I got invited. I texted Mappy Davis. I was like, hey, man, I really want to get in this. And he invited me on his podcast to just make my case. He said, make your case. And that was literally like what we did. And I made my case. Here are all the reasons that I deserve to be there. And here are all the people that are legit at Hyrox who have said that I should be there. Here are people that you've invited who said I should be there. And then, a lot of people just kind of ran with that as me being like a jerk, whatever. But there was no anger or anything like that. It was just like me. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to these sports. I've covered them for a long time, and I'm not just talking out my ass. Like, I actually know what I'm talking about. And this was a good fit. So I pushed hard there, and then still didn't get any movement when I was emailing everyone that worked at Hyrox. I emailed everybody that worked there with like a big long letter about all the reasons that they should invite me, and then still nothing. So then I was just peppering E-Rock with messages every single day and tagging him in every post that I put up. And it was like, and I put a hashtag let Magida race. And and then I would put polls up like should Magida be allowed to race in the Hyrox Invitational? Yes or no? And it would be like 90% of the people responding would be like, yes, yes, yes. And we just kept harassing him until he put up a poll. And it was like, should I let people race? And then, should I let Magida race? And like 90% of the people were like, let Magida race. And he finally just kind of like caved and invited me. And then he actually invited me right before it was postponed. So then it was like, from there, it was just kind of like continue to play the game. He asked me to keep like hyping it up. He wanted to make this big like rivalry between Hunter and I because we got a TV episode, right? Like, you got to have something. And yeah, I mean, I really thought I was actually going to be legitimately well under an hour on my time, but obviously we'll get to all that stuff, but the course is different than I expected. And that's why I was saying it's such a big learning experience. I still think I did very well, all things considered.
Fantastic. And I mean, that was honestly, it's fucking genius. Well done, man. It's really, it's a solid strategy. I can't find fault with it. And yeah, you didn't take it over the line. You didn't go too far. We had a few episodes where we talked about it for sure. And it was, it was smart. It was the way to do it. It got you where you wanted to be. So scheduled for April 10th. So now one of the better things I would think for that is more time to train and get ready.
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely more time to train. For Hunter, though, more time to improve his fitness, because I think he spent the next 2 months really focusing on his running, and that definitely showed on race day. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing is the preparation that I was doing, some of it really translated well, and other parts of it, like I see now, like it's really an education process. Like I really see now, like, okay, here are the holes in what I had in my training, and here's where I need to improve. So you really can't, like, I had so many phone calls with like Bracken where he'd be like, you really need to focus on your sled push and your sled pull, and like they just hit way harder than you expect them to. And I was like, no, man, like I'm pushing like 800 pounds on the sled, like in my gym, like it's gonna be fine. And yet, like the sleds there felt like you were pushing like 800 pounds. Like it's kind of wild.
So, and you said this before.
Yeah, it is. So what's that?
I was gonna say you said this before about it too. So like, what's the difference? Like
I think there's something with the carpet or something too that just makes the friction that much harder, and you don't get good traction on your feet. Like I trained with the weight all the time, and it just felt a million times harder at the event.
Yeah, it really did. My traction was actually okay. I thought I picked a good shoe, and I wasn't concerned with traction really at any point aside from like the cornering. The running the corners was very sketchy. And like you would do like a lot of deceleration, reacceleration, which taxes the legs a lot. And I'm very much like a rhythm runner. So, I was really hoping for like 2 big laps. 3 littler laps definitely slowed me down like a lot, but it slows everybody down. So
yeah, we mentioned that in the broadcast. We were saying that if, and we didn't know what the humidity in the building would be like and stuff like that. But with that many people running around on a concrete floor, it can get very slick. It can get moisture, and especially if you got tight corners, that can be, someone can take a header pretty easy on that.
Well, we actually, I just had to swoop wide on a few, like you kind of figured it out after a few laps, each spot. But then, yes, they would release new waves of people. And now it's like, now you're weaving through people, and you're also taking corners. And like sometimes like someone, you think you're going to take the inside on a corner on somebody, and they're not an experienced racer. They're just out there. And all of a sudden they take the inside corner. And like, I checked like 2 women like in the middle of the race. And I didn't even mean to. It was just like, we just kind of collided. And then, like Hunter and I had a collision. And one time I think he did it on purpose. He kind of ran me into a wall. That wasn't like aggressive. It wasn't like he threw an elbow or anything like that.
And you didn't have a bucket to throw at him?
No, and I wouldn't. I think he had too much on the line to throw an elbow or anything that would get him DQ'd. And honestly, like as long as a little jostling here and there, like rubbing is racing, but like keeping it reasonable too. And there was nothing beyond reasonable in it. So like I thought that was all fun and good. But you definitely had some weird, sketchy corners, some sharp turns, and it changed it a lot. And then obviously the transition area was very, very, very long transition area. So that added a lot of time that I didn't anticipate having that much extra running in it. That was helpful, I guess, for me because I had the fastest run splits, and I had the fastest rock zone split, I believe. So that was all good, but I needed to be stronger in the other areas.
Yeah, well, you know what? I might as well dabble into that because I got the numbers in front of me here, and that was definitely what jumps out here. But I think it's a good thing actually. In hindsight, it's a good thing because it's a good thing. It shows that there's a lot of room for improvement for you. So yeah, you ran a good solid time, but there was a lot of time lost on things that you can improve on. I mean, you're not going to become much faster of a runner over the next whatever few years, right? That being the case, but you can definitely get faster at these stations. And
for sure,
yeah, we're like you were of the group, you were the fastest on the runs. You were, where are we here? You were like 7th and 8th and 9th on some of the stations.
Yeah. So, well, like if we talk out how this like race played out, and I think we should.
Yeah, absolutely.
I ran conservatively on the first lap. I was like, let these guys work. I'm not going to fall for the trap of like overworking the first 1,000 meters because it's 1,000 meter skier, 1,000 meter, and then everybody's heart rates are exploded, and then they're a mess. So I just chilled. That was cruise control. And then hit the ski erg, and believe it or not, I was 500 meters into the ski erg, and my abs started cramping. And I was like, "What is happening?" Like I was like, "Oh," my like alarm bells are going off. I was like, "Oh no, oh no, oh no!" Like I talked all this shit, and then I'm gonna cramp up. And so I had to slow down. I was pulling 140 pace, and I had to slow to 153 to avoid cramping, like my abs cramping, because those will wreck you and an ab cramp. And so then that's why I left the erg like 12 or 15 seconds after Hunter did, and started the next run. But then I felt great, and then I just rolled everybody on that next run. And then and my plan was to run faster splits than I did, but obviously the cornering makes it sketchy. Like I was planning on running every 1,000 at like 325, which is like 530 mile pace.
And you were in there, like, I mean, your first lap was 305, and then you settled into like the kind of like the 330, 340 zone after that.
Yeah, well, you know, the first lap is shorter, and so you have to account for like probably an extra 20 seconds or so on the first lap that we didn't get. But yes, it was quick, but it was not overrun, I think, for me. And then we hit the sleds, and Hunter takes off on the sled, and I was like, I'm in the lane next to him in second place, and the crowd is like screaming, and it's like this whole thing. And I remember just, you know, looking over at him and seeing him hit the sled, go about halfway down the lane, and then stop for a breather and like step back from the sled. And I was like, man, he's hurting already. I was like, and I go and I do my push and I blow like right by it. And I was like, okay, oh, I can push with him. No problem. Oh, let me get in his head. And then we go like just toe to toe. Like every time he stops, I push the sled past where he stops, and we just keep going like this back and forth. And I think he was playing me a little bit, because I think he wanted me to like really push hard on the sled to like take something out of me. And it did take a lot out of me. Like I was pretty banged up when we finished the sled. He comes off the sled. I came off the sled like, I don't know, like 8 seconds later. Yeah. And then I had to walk like until I got to like the corner to transition out. I had to walk like 20 yards. I was like, I need this. And then took off and then smoked him on the next run. Right. And then come into the sled pull in first place. And that is where he just demolished me.
His sled pull was unbelievable.
It was crazy. It was crazy. And like, look, like that's where I look at him like, oh my God, I can get 2 minutes faster on that sled pull. I can get 2 minutes there.
Well, yeah, like on the sled pull, you were 7th on the sled pull.
Yeah, I had a rough pull. So, and I think part of that was that I really hit the push too hard. And then I also hammered the next run, which is not that I ran that fast in the next run, but it's hard to run super fast coming off a really aggressive sled push. And so my heart rate was very high. And I was just, you know, I was surprised by how much grip and like bicep I was using on the sled drag, because again, it just felt a lot heavier. And you were talking about like, why do these sleds feel so heavy? I think part of it is the type of sled they use. The weight distribution is very different. I use a Prowler sled which has got, you know, it's wider at the back, and you put the weight more towards the back end. And for whatever reason, center loading the weight, I think on these sleds that are like, they're like a dog sled or an echo sled, like they just tend to sit a little heavier into the ground too. So that's part of it, I think, for why they're harder. And then, yeah, the carpet is very high friction carpet. So I learned for next time, I'm going to start practicing all my sled drags with like 800 pounds. We're just going to get really monstrous, you know, come off the sled. And now I'm in no man's land, because even though I didn't have a great sled drag, I was so far ahead of everybody else by that point. I was minutes ahead of the next guy, I think. And then 2 minutes behind Hunter. And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm just going to run hard. But I gassed myself. I come into the burpee broad jumps and I was just gassed. I just never really pulled my heart rate back down where I wanted it to be. And then from there, I had a really lousy burpee broad jump, probably the worst of all my training sessions. And that's not one that should be any different. And then, yeah, I had a lousy row. I use the row as recovery.
Yeah.
I use the row as, I really did. I just took a gel during it. And then I don't know, you guys probably didn't see that, but I ate a gel as I was coming in and threw it on the floor next to my rower, and then just kind of chilled in the rower. And the whole idea was like flush the legs, get the heart rate back down, hammered the run after that one. And then started having some cramping issues right after the farmer's carry. So cramped up in my calves a little bit, and just kind of had to pull back on the run a little bit towards the last couple runs. Mm-hmm. And then on the wall balls, and then the lunges too, I was trying to avoid cramping. So quads were trying to cramp, and I didn't take any water during the race, so that was probably a factor. Taking the gel without water is like never smart. But I never saw the water station. I was so tunnel visioned the whole race. Like the water station, like I found out afterwards when we were watching some of the live feed. I was like, there was a water station there? Like I had no idea. So I finished the lunges, ugly lunges for me too, slower than normal in my training on the lunges. And then the wall balls, I kind of just once I got through my first like 50 or 60 wall balls, I really mailed it in. So I was like, I'm like 3.5 minutes ahead of the next guy. Hunter's already done. Like, what's the point of like killing myself to do like a 4-minute wall ball round? I could just ease in. And I did like just a hair under 5 minutes, I think. But that I can take a minute off of for sure too. So there's a lot of these stations that for sure I can do faster. But I got to be conservative early in the race, I think is the biggest lesson learned.
It's amazing that, and yeah, definitely. When you say hair under 5 minutes, yeah, you were 4:59. So that could definitely be shortened down. But
yeah.
And we mentioned it in the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Beth. Were you jumping in there?
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, we were saying it on the broadcast that once you kind of, by the time, almost right after the sled pull, we're like, and we went into the rower zone, like we were kind of saying, there's no sense pushing too hard now. It's more about not blowing up and just setting yourself a good pace and maintaining that gap,
Well, yeah, and that's it because originally my plan was to just race the clock and not even worry about Hunter. But then once he and I got into that little duel, and I overextended myself like way too much. Like instead of running, because there's two ways to race, right? You can race to run like your best possible time, which is like run conservatively, run smart, hit your splits. And then there's like race to win, which is like never lose contact, duke it out, head to head, play the psychological games, all that stuff. And I switched to that method in the middle of the race. And then that meant that I suffered like way more through the later parts of it. It's almost like watching Derek Yorick lead the Boston Marathon for 2 miles and then have to suffer through like a 3-hour marathon the rest of the way. It was kind of like that. So I hurt pretty bad, but like once I was on the rower, I was like 3.5 minutes up on Eric by the time he reached the rower. And I was like, well, what am I hammering for at this point? And now just don't blow. Like, I'm not trying to lose $3,000. Like, let's just be smart. Let's just take it easy. So I took my foot off the gas. I think he gained on me over the rest of the race. I just I ran the runs as well as, I could without like really hurting myself because like, then you're worried about like when the cramp twinges start, you're like, let's not go there. Let's not get to that point. Let's just hold it back. And if I had just gone 30 seconds slower on the sled push to begin with, I think I would have had a very different experience through the whole race. And that's Hyrox, right? It's like, you can't win the race on any one station, but you can lose it on one station.
Yeah.
I think it's tough though, as a competitive athlete, because I was thinking too, if anyone in that situation and you're neck and neck with someone, it's hard to not get in your head where you just want to go toe to toe with that person. Like, I think anyone would have done the same. And Hunter probably knew, like you were saying, he probably knew that if you guys got side by side, you might overextend yourself. So it was probably part of his game too.
He's a good tactical racer. I mean, it's like most people think he's a big dummy, but he's smarter than you think he is, at least, especially as a racer. And, so people also, maybe most people don't know, like he and I have been racing together for like 9 years, not just like showing up to the same events, but like, sharing hotel rooms and running on the same team and all that stuff. And we were really good friends, and we've had contentious moments, and then we've been really good friends again. And it's kind of like this on and off thing. And I always called him Seabiscuit, like the idea of like when like you slow Seabiscuit down so Seabiscuit can go eye to eye with the horse next to it, and then Seabiscuit can't lose, like it takes off. But I kind of got my own like Seabiscuit moment, like where like he, like when I'm next to him, I was like, screw this guy, I'm gonna just break him like right here. And clearly he wanted me to think that. So
it's good that you can at least admit that you got caught in that.
I fell into the trap. It's fine. But I do think that, man, I would have been much quicker if I just run my own race.
So the biggest question then is future. Is this something you're sticking with? Like, I mean, are you going to angle your training towards staying in Hyrox and getting better and better?
Yeah. I still want to take him down. So, I think I'll definitely crack an hour next time. One, because I'll be a minute faster on the wall balls alone. And then this course, from what Jack Bauer was saying, he thinks that this course was 2 to 2.5 minutes, I think, slower than last year's course. I mean, based on the fact that Hunter was like a minute 30 slower than last year, despite running faster, his fastest run he's ever done, his fastest burpee broad jump, his fastest lunge, his fastest farmer's carry.
Yep.
It's like, and having from what people have told me, a much harder sled than the previous year.
Yeah,
interesting, because I want to ask you about the sled thing. So because when I did Hyrox, the sled, it was 25 meters, 25 meters. And I found out the hardest part was just getting the tension out of the rope because it was so long. Did anyone say anything about that though? Because you had a shorter distance that you had to move it.
It's interesting, right? So like that is definitely a factor. And for sure that makes it harder. Longer rope makes it harder. But the slip coefficient on the carpet, I think, easily negates that, because before people were like, oh, like I had trouble getting traction, it was slippery. But remember, if it's slippery for your feet, that means the sled will slide easier too, right? So there is something there. Like I had zero issues with slipping because this carpet was tacky as hell. But then the sled just stuck to it like glue. It was pretty wild. And I think that the anaerobic effort that I put out, both from the push and the pull, really affected me for the rest of the race. Like I could still turn over on the run, because I can always turn over on the run. But the other stuff, like it just really beat you down.
Yeah, what you're saying, Bethany, too, is with that, I think with the sled where you had more time, not so much on the push. On the push, I don't think it would be as relevant, but on the pull, you're having to run back and forth more often, which means you're having to break up your momentum, right? So you're almost having to take more breaks. So in a way, I thought when we first went into that, I thought that actually might slow things down on the sled pull, because you'd only get 12.5 meters. Then you'd have to run to the other end, pull 12.5 meters. And although you're not pulling as much stretch out of the rope, you're having to stop and move more.
There is extra distance for sure. Alex Roncevic, this is a good way to look at it. And I was like looking through some stats yesterday. I'm not a Jack Bauer stat nerd, but I'm a stat nerd. And Alex Roncevic has done 102 multiple times, and he went 110 yesterday. And he has, on the sled push in Europe, done 145 or something crazy fast, right? Right. You have to throw it out. Different material that they're pushing on, right? But yesterday, his sled push was like 4 minutes or something? Like it's the difficulty. The change was not in weight. The change was in the coefficient of friction. And I think that just really shocked everyone. It definitely shocked me.
Yeah, he definitely, when you guys got there, he was still hanging with you two when you guys got to the sled push, and then that just obliterated him. He was cooked after that. He dropped right off the map. For a while, we didn't know where he went.
Yeah, I mean, credit to him for going for it. Like he really did. And then also, you know what? He pulled himself back into the race, which like, man, you know how hard that is when you're like exploded and you just got passed by like everybody, and then you put yourself back together. He never really had the running legs to do what he needed to do, but he did a lot of other stuff really well. Like he did his drag, his pull was really good, I think, from what I understand.
But plus he did do all the traveling to get there and stuff like that, and that is wear and tear on you to get ready for that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But I mean, listen, like even like I went out and had a couple drinks with Elijah Muhammad last night and his wife. And
that'd be a cool experience.
Yeah, it was fun. They're really fun. And it was just my girlfriend Kate and I and the two of them, and we just went and grabbed like a drink, and he was saying, I was like, was the sled hard for you? He was like, hell yeah, the sled was hard for me. And this guy, and he's a monster, right? He's so strong. But he was like, that sled was like one of the hardest sleds he's like ever pushed and pulled.
And like I said, is it just comes down to the make of the sled and the carpet? Is that the deal?
I think it's the weight distribution and the friction. That's like, I was blown away. I was like, this feels like 700 pounds.
And Beth, you said the same thing about when you did it too.
Yeah, and I don't know, the carpet looked like the same carpet. It was that gray, kind of shiny looking carpet, but like, I don't know, it could be the surface it's on. But I even noticed with the women, like Lauren was really struggling on the sled this time, and she doesn't seem to normally struggle that much on it.
Yeah. Would Hyrox be wise to take a page out of actually Decca's book and have those tanks or something on the wheels, and then the carpet becomes a moot point?
Maybe.
I don't think.
I mean, because like the wise statement was made. I think not all Hyrox are created equal. Like, maybe. I don't know how. I've never actually pushed one of those like tanks. I don't know how hard they are. I really have no clue.
I haven't. They're just so big and expensive, though, Dave. Like when you're thinking about moving these things around the country too, like those tanks take up way more space than the little ones that Hyrox uses.
Well, I don't know, because the tanks do, but they also have the weights. Yeah. They already own all those assets. Like, why invest more money when you have all these assets already? And honestly, I think the actual sled looks just so badass. Like, I thought the look of that was, for everybody that came up to me and talked to me after the race, they were like, that sled push was like the most epic thing, you know? So
it was, I think, and it was exciting when it looked like, okay, you came in very close, and then it looks like you were like, okay, is he, because Hunter's said time and time again, the race begins after the sled push. And, you know, to come out of there, or, you know, come in there together and then get pretty close, and it made it look like it was going to be a pretty good race. So.
Yeah, you know, I felt that way too. You know, but again, like, you know, like I talked to Kent yesterday, Ryan Kent, and he was like, man, like, you had a great first showing. Like, yeah, like, don't stress. He's like, I cut like 4 minutes off it between like my first and my third. So like, he's like, this is just how it goes your first time.
It seems like that with everybody. I mean, even I think in the women's thing, it might be an odd example, but Brooke Bowen had a time of 1:31 before. This time she was 1:26.
Yeah,
like a 5-minute cutoff. That's amazing. And it seems, I mean, 5 minutes might not be the norm, but it seems there's a very drastic decrease in everybody's second attempt when they start to learn how to pace themselves, exactly where it's going to hit them, how it's going to feel, how the different stations will hit them, you know, cardiovascularly. So it definitely would be a drop off. I would not be surprised to see you crack 60 on the next one.
Yeah, I know. I think that would be the goal, is crack 60 and then take at least a minute off each time moving forward from there. You know, like a minute is 15 seconds around between a run and a station, piece of cake. Like that totally can be squeezed out. But like, it's like, okay, I'll get a minute faster I'll get at least 40 seconds faster on the burpee broad jumps, a minute faster on the lunges than I did. Because I've in training during my sims, I've done a lot faster in the lunges than I did. There were some things that, like, you know, like surprise you a little bit that are different than in your training, because like for the lunges, you're not allowed to remove it from your shoulders once it's on there. So like, okay, for me, I have to adjust to the fact that this is not a sandbag, it's a bag full of weights. And that means your neck is wrenched forward. And I was like trying to keep my neck from like locking up. And, that was a surprise experience for me. So I got to get like a similar sandbag. I can't use like a bag that's full of sand. Like these are things that are learning experiences that it surprises you. Like, it wasn't my legs were cramping a little, but it was also like my arms were very uncomfortable in that position. And I got to get a bag that has handles in this exact spot as opposed to out here. Like it's getting exactly used to the precise things that you're going to do. And those change you dramatically. The burpee broad jumps, it's just being more used to selling out on that. Like, I kind of tried to recover too much on that instead of just selling out on it. And Hunter sold out on the burpee broad jumps. I mean, he went like 2 minutes flat, like crazy. And I think he also knew, like, okay, this is the time to like put the hammer down and like win the race, like right now. And for me, it was like, okay, I literally knew I cannot catch him at this point. Like, it's already too much to gain. Yeah. So for me, it was I kind of just was running very conservatively for the rest of the race.
No, it makes sense. So I guess one of the questions I would have is, what are the biggest surprises for you from this? Like, and for me, I'll go back to actually performances. Rachel Schreiber, I don't want to say she was too much of a surprise for us because I actually picked her to do well. Yeah. And
good bet. Good bet.
Good bet. Well, it's only because we talked to her and she explained how our training was going. So so she let us in, but she's a fantastic. I was actually really impressed with Faith.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, she put in a really good time. And
what was her time?
I believe it was 1:19.
Wow. Yeah. You know what?
Exactly.
For a girl that does not love to run,
yeah,
she did great. Yeah.
So she was a big surprise for me. And Eric Hinman, actually, I did not think I didn't have him on the podium at all. I thought maybe he would drift back a little bit. He totally surprised me. So I was just curious.
To be perfectly frank, like Hinman, I never the only time I actually saw him in the race was when he got on the rower when I was 700 meters in, but he really surprised me. I thought he was there as a publicity stunt for 10,000 shorts, but dude showed up. I mean, he can grind, and he's not fast, right? He's not fast per se, but he can grind, and he had no glaring weaknesses, which I think is the biggest thing.
Well, he's an Ironman guy, right? So he definitely has the endurance, not the foot speed necessarily, but
yeah, exactly. And again, being able to suffer is probably the number one thing that you need to be good at Hyrox. And then from there, it's okay, let me put together my skill specific stuff and my high intensity work and my actual power training.
So what about you? What were there any other big surprises? What got you as a big surprise?
Of the events or of
people? Sure.
Obviously the sleds were much heavier than I anticipated. And the sandbag was heavier than anticipated. I put the kettlebells down on the farmer's carry a couple times, but that was planned. That was I use that station as a recovery station so I can just blast the next run. And my time was still under 2 minutes, I think there, or so right around 2 minutes, I think. So that was fine. I think I was just surprised that I cramped up a little bit. That was probably the biggest surprise for me. I was like, this never happens to me. So, everything was harder. Everything was harder than how I've done it in my training, which is so interesting. So that's why in my training, I've done the full distance plus extra in the fastest one I did was 53 minutes. And I was obviously you're going to add rock zone time and stuff, but I never thought that it would be that much harder in each workout station. And then it does make you slower. And then, let me just say, when you're running your third lap of every round, and then right as you're passing the start area, they release another wave of pro men. It is insane because now you're all of a sudden there are 20 guys behind you running as hard as they can for their first lap. And you're oh my God, you're trying to not get swallowed by this horde of people that's coming from behind you. So that was always kind of scary whenever they would release another one of those groups. But yeah, I mean, I think I was surprised also just by if you look at Kempson's performance versus what he's done in previous races and Alex's performance and what he's done in previous races is this course was kind of one of the uglier ones for Hyrox.
Yeah, it was not a fast course. It absolutely was not. And that showed in everybody's time. And that's, I mean, Jack and I had talked about it and we figured that Hunter probably would have broke his record if this was set up like the other course from the year before.
I think he would have broken his record by a minute. Yeah. To be honest, I think that's probably about where he would have been in the 56-40 range, I think, give or take. I mean, I'm guesstimating, but his running is stronger than it's been for any of the other events he's done, and he PR'd a bunch of those other events. So yeah, I mean,
and as well, we thought Rachel would have got the women's record as well if it was the same course as the year before.
I don't doubt that. I thought Rachel, let me talk about surprises on the women's side. Rachel was so exciting to watch, extraordinary, amazing athlete. when can a CrossFitter run like that? Great job. Like fast enough. And
she has a track background. She ran college track.
Did she?
Yeah.
Beast. She's a beast.
Yeah, and she's run a Boston qualifying marathon.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not surprised to hear that because she could just turn it over, and she just stayed very steady on the runs, and then she just beasted those stations. Like, she obliterated the carry station. She was great on the lunges. We watched all that, and we were like, she's awesome. And then, you know, honestly,
yeah, she was actually a runner turned CrossFitter, so she's like that perfect mix.
Yeah, exactly, great mix. And then I thought Hammond did amazing. Like, every time she hit a run, she just rolled. It was like she came off the sled and I was like, oh, she's going to be in trouble. And she was just like, took off. And I was like, man, look at that stride. Like, amazing. And then third female was Weeks, right?
Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that she didn't win, only because I think she would, like, at the World Championships, she's built and more experienced to run assault runners rather than like that takes the legs out of like a pure runner more than it does an athlete like her who's like so strong. And I think for her, it was like really tough to come in like with all that pressure of like being the defending champ and all that. And it's like, it's so hard to have that target on your back. And she's like such a nice, like level-headed, easygoing person. So like, that's a lot on her. And she's like, I just want to run my race. Like, I don't think about all that, but like, I'm not surprised she lost this particular race. It doesn't mean that she can't come back and beat Rachel at another event, especially if they put worlds on assault runners. Like, I stand no chance. She'll do better. Rachel will probably be very good on that, but I think it will be close between them then.
Well, I know Rachel told us she did a sim before on an assault runner and did a 106 in her sim on the assault runner. So I mean,
dang.
Yeah, she is good for that. I don't think you'll ever see Hyrox do that again, though. I think that was just a pure COVID thing to get something out there, and it worked really well. Good. So I think
it's really cool to watch. I mean, it was fun to watch. That's what got me really hyped up to actually do Hyrox was sitting back and watching that and going, yeah, this is it, man. Like I think this is what I want to focus on for a little while. Obviously there's a couple other things. Hunter and I are both going to be chasing the same thing coming up, which is we're both going to go for the Clydesdale marathon record.
You're going to put on a couple
Yeah, I'm about 190 right now. But to be competitive in Hyrox, I think I got to be 7 or 8 pounds heavier anyways. So I'll be in that like 197 range, and then I'll just bulk for a marathon. But I mean, I ran a 240 in November. So
bulk for a marathon.
There's a phrase you don't hear very often.
Just a little. But you know, like you get used to it, and I'll do some training with the weight vest on to be kind of used to it. So when you take it off, you just kind of roll. But you know, like I did 240 in the marathon in November, and if I had not, I cracked at mile 21. If I hadn't cracked at mile 21, we were on pace for 236, which is 1 minute off the Clydesdale world record. So I can run that fast. I just got to get a little bigger, and then. You know, all my friends that marathon a lot, they just keep telling me like the more you do it, you just have good days and you have bad days, and you'll have a magical day when it clicks, and you could be like one of the guys that kind of semi coaches me sometimes, like sends me workouts, and just kind of he runs an organization in Boulder called the Boulder Underground. Matt Hensley, he's like trying to always like Olympic qualify and stuff. Like he's a monster. But he said like some days you just have like a magical day where you just like put it all together. And then he's like, I wouldn't be surprised if you ran a 231. So it's all about like what your body chemistry is like that day. And I think the same goes for Hyrox. Like I definitely did not feel good as we started the race. Waiting till 3 p.m. to race is like a terrible, horrible thing that I've actually never really done since high school, because all day I was like, what do I eat? I really underfed myself like all day because I didn't want to have like an upset stomach in there. And then so we ate like a bagel in the morning, and then I had like an English muffin with like a little bit of egg on it. And then I think I was like in a lot of calorie deficit like going into the race. And that's a learned practice. Again, another learning experience. Like I'll be more prepared for the next one. And I think that's another minute up speed right there.
As an OCR racer, you're used to going at like 7, like between 7 and 9 in the morning for your heat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love going early in the morning, and that's when I typically train is early in the morning. So, and then you could do it on an empty stomach or half a bagel or something like that, and it's fine, or bowl of oatmeal or whatever it is that's your thing. But waiting until 3 p.m. is like, that's two meals that you have to like make sure like you don't upset your stomach. Mm-hmm. You don't want anything heavy in you. You got to have it be like the right fuel. Where we were in this hotel was like, you had like only barbecue joints around the area. And then like the hotel food was terrible. And extremely expensive. Like, whoa, I'm really glad I won some money because this hotel was crazy expensive.
Awesome, man. So Chicago U.S. Championships, Hyrox, I assume that's to go?
I don't know, because they told us before, they were like, this doesn't qualify you for U.S. Championships because it's an invitational. And I was like, I don't understand. Did I not run the second fastest time of the day?
Have you started sending emails to E-Rock?
I'm gonna. Well, so Christian, you know Christian?
Yeah.
Christian came up to me after the race and we were talking, and he said, "Oh, like you're gonna do great in Leipzig at the World Championships." And I said, "Oh, am I invited to the World Championships?" And he said, "Of course you're invited to the World Championships." So I don't understand how this race can get me an invitation to World Championships, but cannot get me an invitation to the U.S. Championship. So maybe they'll waiver me in or something. I'm not really trying to have to go and run like another Hyrox in like 3 weeks and then run another Hyrox like, a month after that. Like, give me a chance to like actually train for a little while. That'd be great. But yeah, I would love to do that. And then, like I said, I have the New York Marathon at the end of the year. If they let me in, I need to finally fill out my info because I got deferred from last year, obviously. And that's like a big one for me. And then Mark Gaudette, my training partner, he wants us to run 100-miler at some point in the next year. So we've got a lot of stuff like that are really like not related from a training perspective, like all in the same thing. Like it's like I've always been that person that's like, you got to specialize. If you want to be really good, you have to specialize. But I don't have to. Well, clearly I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but we'll figure it out. I wanted to say like, I'm Team Morgan for the next one, by the way.
Yeah.
Get her into the next one, please. Like, that was egregious. That being said, the women's field was so deep. So, like the women's field was much deeper than the men's field. So like, I'll take second place, but like we didn't have Lucas there and we didn't have Atkins there. And when each time, you can ask my girlfriend, each time when I found out one of them wasn't racing, I was like devastated. Because I think that would have brought a lot more out of me, for sure.
Well, it'll happen, all in good time, right? When that border gets open for us, it'll be a little easier for them to get there. I know that was definitely the deciding factor.
No, it's I was sad, but at the same time, like you can only beat who's in front of you. And that's it. You can only race the people who are there at the race. And I thought Morgan should have gotten the invitation to the race, but they had a great women's field. Like, having Alyssa Hawley be there and not even make the podium is, insane. But she's been fighting injuries and having, like that. It was just like you looked at that women's field and it was just so stacked, so crazy. So I think that was the race of the weekend. Our race was kind of like a footnote comparatively.
And we were actually missing 3 of the best Hyrox women from overseas as well.
I know, that's the most insane thing.
Viola, Sarah, and Imke. I mean, women's Hyrox is like the most entertaining going.
Isn't that crazy, right? Because like, when you look at like Spartan, the men's field is so deep and the women's field is beginning to get deep, but it's always been a few years behind. It's like the women's field is where the men's field was like 4 years ago. And in terms of like, you have like 7 people that are like vying for the crown and really like 3 who are like the big time. Mm-hmm. And then in the men's field, it's really like, you probably have like 7 people that could win on any given day. And then like another 20 people that could be on the podium, just depending on how the course is laid out. And in Hyrox, it's reversed. It's like, you know who the men's winner is going to be, like, before the race even begins. And then it's like, you got a couple people that might get on the podium. And then on the women's field, it's like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, day to day, like, you could have anybody could be that winner. Anybody could set the world record and at any given day. Like, the women's race was so exciting to watch. Like, I thought that is damn good television.
Yeah. We loved it. It was so much fun. Anyway, so like I said, we'll let you get to celebrating, man.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And
thanks.
Great job yesterday. Yeah, we wanted to congratulate you. And keep crushing it. Thanks for giving us something awesome to talk about.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on, guys. And cheers. I got my wine here. So cheers to y'all. And I love the podcast. So thanks for having me on.
Cheers.